Welcome to the Rebel's Edge. Yesterday, we had producer prices that were softer than expected. Today, consumer prices follow that same path. So inflation appears to be ebbing, not done, but ebbing. And that's good for the markets. We'll talk about that, some sports, and a whole bunch of stocks on the Rebel's Edge. Bang!
All right. He still owes me, by the way. He still owes me. McConaughey, let me tell you something. Your brother Rooster would pay. You haven't paid. You got to pay the piper.
You know, a lot of people, Pete, probably watched that show. What was it? Texas something or other. West Texas. I think they called it West Texas something or other. It was kind of like Shark Tank. I don't want to say for Hicks, but Shark Tank without a lot of the fancy stuff. How about that? And Matthew McConaughey's brother, Rooster, was one of the big folks that would fund some of these crazy ideas. And anyway, I'm getting off track, Pete, but that's right. Pete had to reach out to Rooster to try to get McConaughey to agree to come on the show because, like we said, Texas lost.
Yep.
All right, Pete, let's take a look at the macro picture today.
Sure.
Macro picture, I'm going to say, I saw this stat and I was pretty amazed, Pete. EV and hybrid sales reached a record 20% of U.S. vehicle sales. Why do you think that is? I think it's because people get to write off some money when they buy either of those, an EV electric vehicle or a hybrid electric vehicle. I think that's what's driving it, Pete. And it turns out that the hybrid vehicles, in other words, not pure electric like a Tesla, were 2/3 of that number. So I think a lot of people are sort of getting away with one here, Pete. Anyway, what do you think for macro today?
Well, they're getting away from something else as well, John. I mean, we all talk about those numbers yesterday. That's why the market was up the way it was. And you add to that all the earnings from some of the biggest financial players in the industry or whatever, and you get a move of 700 points. I mean, that's absolutely incredible, right? But food and energy, John, I know we all want to strip it out. We want to do this. We don't want to do that. But I will tell you this. If you talk to any of these folks in the restaurant business, they will tell you beef is an issue. Eggs are an issue. Obviously, moving things around and for even all the rest of us, moving around with the automobiles that we've got that aren't EVs, that's an issue. So I think you got to really put all those things together. They're talking about beef prices, John, up about 5%. So, yeah, it's great to see that some of these numbers are coming down, but there's some big numbers out there that are still fighting this fight, and we ain't over it yet.
Well, I'll dive right into futures, Pete, with Waller, one of the members of the FOMC, Federal Open Markets Committee, has said that rate cuts may come sooner and faster than expected. We said yesterday that we'd have 2 days of Monday and Tuesday of 4.8 for the 10-year. You look at where it is now, Pete, 4.60 and going down still. So I wouldn't bet that we get a cut before March, but nonetheless, the inflation data has been favorable in terms of not showing inflation bubbling up.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about that. And I think the other thing, talking about bubbling up, how about this? What if I told you December, because a lot of us have forgotten this already, because it seems like forever ago. It's not that long ago. But the volatility index, John, actually closed at over 27. It hit to trade over 28. And now look at the volatility index today. Absolutely been getting crushed over the last couple of sessions. Here we are in the 16s. It was not as long ago as Monday. We were at 22. So you can see what's going on. A very dramatic move in the volatility index, which means a lot less expensive probably in a lot of cases because that's a measure of the S&P, but you're probably seeing the IV going down, down, down in a lot of these names, unless they've got a catalyst like earnings. So volatility is definitely in the favor of the market players right now.
Yep. And people are always wise to keep an eye on it at least. You don't have to trade it, Pete and I, when we trade it, we rarely buy VIX calls or puts, but we trade it through S&P 500.
Right.
Because in general, when you see volatility going up, that means that the S&P is going the opposite direction. That's not a lock, but it's about a 98% chance.
Indeed.
All right, Pete, let's dive into stocks. One of them that you and Justin Nugent have targeted for months, BigBear.ai. That's BBAI. We had unusual activity in this one, folks. That means that we saw people making upside bets. 11,000 of those March 350s with the stock at 3. Today it was 376. It's moved even higher than that. And those calls have been moving up. They're already up, I think, 20 or 25% on the day, Pete. Why is it up? Well, Kevin McLennan is going to be the new CEO and board member effective January 15th, which was yesterday.
It's an amazing thing, John, because they're pretty excited about this. Now, it's not that the old CEO, the woman who was the CEO, was doing a terrible job, but I think the experience that Kevin's got in working with the government, being on the business side, the experience that he's got there, he worked at U.S. Homeland Security. I think for those reasons, people are pretty excited about what they can do here at Big Bear. And because of that, when you've got a short interest of 14, call it 30%, somewhere in that range, depending on what you want to look at, it's a good reason why we're seeing the stock make the move it's making. And also, it's a lot of what we're seeing in terms of the volumes. The volume turnover today, it was a full day of turnovers in the first 2 hours. So we'll see exactly how much trade goes into this one, John. But the new CEO is definitely given a little bit of a red carpet treatment right now, and the stock's making a nice move. And those unusual options have been right in BBAI.
Well, then we have, Pete, the next one on our list, Symbotic. They sort of take the last part of that name from robotic, but basically shares trading higher. Walmart agreed to sell them their advanced systems and robotics business because Walmart needed that to keep prices in line so that they could keep drawing in customers, Pete. Obviously, they can pull more money to the bottom line because of this. Well, this acquisition is about $200 million in cash. They could pay a lot more than that over the next several years, Pete, but it also locks them in pretty tight with Walmart. So I'd say it's a win-win. And if you take a look at SYM shares today, you'll see why I'm calling it a win for both sides, even the side spending a lot of money.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. This is an interesting company because you look at their balance sheet, it's absolutely pristine. It's Symbotic, and that's pretty phenomenal. They do have some huge shorts in there. That's what's kind of giving it an extra little bit of a lift today because they're talking about somewhere between 15 and call it 25% on the short side. So those squeezes certainly can happen. I'm looking at the 52-week low and high of 17 to 52, and the stock is now up significantly, but trading somewhere closer to call it 31, right? Now, With that, I think there's a lot of room to the upside because what is it that NVIDIA talked about, John? Robotics, right? And now all of a sudden we come over to this and it's like, okay, this is about robotics and in making things more efficient for Walmart. They're starting off slow. They're talking about starting with only like 100 some odd stores. We know there's a hell of a lot more than that. And then moving on. This is a $300 billion opportunity that's in front of them. That's what the market looks like for the future. I think I'm getting more and more intrigued by Symbotic. I'm not saying I've bought any yet because I haven't, but I'm certainly getting pretty damn itchy on it, John, because, oftentimes when you've got shorts like this, they got shorts for a reason. You've got something in the balance sheet that really doesn't add up for anybody. Well, that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing everything else looking pretty damn good. And a contract like this that can only expand as long as things go smooth, I think that's a big deal, and a big deal not just for Walmart, but for Symbotic for sure.
For sure, yeah. I mean, almost anybody that does a deal with Walmart, it's a bigger deal for them than it is for Walmart. Yeah. They're just so damn big. World's largest retailer, folks. Mm-hmm. All right, Taiwan Semiconductor, Pete, TSM. And yes, we did have unusual activity in this one as well, folks. Take a look. Just yesterday, 9:30 in the morning, just after the open, somebody steps in and they buy the January 24th expiring 202 calls with the stock at 201. Well, the stock went through 221 today. So it was up 14 bucks. It's still holding on to over a $10 gain right now. Record profits over here at TSM is the reason that we're seeing this big jump. And Pete, these guys are the guys that make the processors for NVIDIA and for Apple, because neither of those firms, they design them, but they don't make them. Taiwan Semi or TSM, they make them.
Yep, you're exactly right. I mean, they're the processor, they're the manufacturer. It's amazing when you look at revenue for a monstrous company like this, John, to see them have revenue up 38+%, almost 39% year over year. That's an extraordinary number. And then you mentioned about the record profits. That's impressive as hell as well. So when you look through this whole process and you go, well, is there anything negative here? I can't find anything. I'm looking around and I'm like, you know what? Everybody talks about NVIDIA and everybody talks about Broadcom and they talk about this. Taiwan Semi is not one to sleep on. That net income, John, was up 57%. So across the board, you're just looking at huge, huge win, 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 win. This is a company that I think is still has plenty of room to the upside. I don't think it's even close to over as we get further and further into the world of AI and all of the rest. I think this is going to be big. I think Taiwan Semi is the backbone of it all.
Yeah, and Pete, of course, the right to buy it at 202.50 is nearly $20 in the money, plus a little premium, because these expire on the 24th of January, which isn't this week, it's next Friday. So you've got a lot of days next week when this thing could push a lot higher than 221. All right, Pete, let's do one more stock and then we'll move on. Let's talk about Bankapalooza.
I like that. That's a John thing all the way.
It is. Yesterday, we had the big dogs. We had Citi, we had JP Morgan, we had Wells Fargo. Today, we got, I know one of these isn't a bank, Morgan Stanley, but nonetheless, they get to kind of fall into that sector just like Goldman Sachs does, but neither one of them are really banks. But Bank America profit, Pete, more than doubled. And while I would seem like I'm saying everything is so rosy, you know, we got to wear shades. Nope. PNC, take a look at that one, Pete. What do you see there?
Yeah, not everybody is doing everything perfectly or great or in the right spot, quite frankly. But if you're in the investment banking and you're not winning, you shouldn't even be around. You ought to get out of it. I mean, honestly. I mean, the one name you left out from yesterday is the biggest, baddest of them all, which is Goldman Sachs, who absolutely crushed it. And their investment banking side was up incredibly well. How about Morgan Stanley? Investment banking, John, profits were up 146%. I mean, how do you do that? And you look at the trading revenue up 22%. These numbers are extraordinary. And then you look over at Bank of America. Oh, you know, investment banking is up 44%. These are old companies that have been around forever who have shifted into the right spot. And you and I have been talking about this probably for the better part of 9 months, maybe longer, where it's like, why do you like the financials? Well, because if you're in the investment banking side of the financials, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, you know, you go through the whole list, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, it's there. That is where they're going to make their money. And they are making their money, and they're proving it throughout this earnings, you know, palooza that started just yesterday. And it ain't over yet. There's still some names out there. There's some big banks, some big financials out there that are doing extremely well in an environment that's like it is, the IPOs and all these different deals. I mean, the deal making is off the charts. Absolutely, the billions and billions of dollars. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And that's where these financial companies are crushing it.
They sure are, Pete. It's pretty incredible. And I think you nailed it. If you don't have, if not close to, somewhere near record investment banking business this quarter, you really have to wonder what you're doing wrong in that bank.
Yeah.
All right, Pete, let's take a quick look at this. I know we usually show you guys videos right here, but instead I'm just going to show you a quick tweet because it kind of emphasizes, you know, there is one of the best in the game, Josh Allen, and he's used to doing that. And our friend Kristen Kaliga, who's an agent with Vanguard Sports. She's got 3 players that she represents, Pete, on the Bills. And she was there at that game, along with Doug Flutie, who also played for the Bills. But that's Josh Allen, of course. And it's going to be cold. I don't know if it'll be snowy, but it's going to be cold. And they say the real field temperature will be around -3, Pete, -3. So this isn't exactly, though, the Dolphins or the Rams or the Chargers going into play there. Baltimore's not as cold, but I don't think this is really necessarily an edge for the Bills. Do you?
No, not an edge. There's no way. Baltimore can be pretty ferocious in terms of wind, in terms of cold and snow. But obviously, it's a home game for Buffalo. It's a big stadium. Those people don't mind throwing back a couple of drinks before they get in there, John. So it's going to be a lot of fun in that stadium. I promise you that. What do you got there? A little bit of a Puerto Rican beer or something already?
It was the microbrew.
Right. That sounds great. Well, but in any case, yeah, I think Josh Allen is absolutely amazing. Now, he's got to get over the hump. And if he doesn't, then that's one more year that people are going to say, when is it ever going to happen, including Josh? He's been, Kansas City. That's a tough one. Obviously, the Ravens, when you've got the King Henry running the football, I don't care who your defense is. They can be great. They still going to have to really strap it up, so to speak, John, because that guy is a freak show talent that I don't think anybody understood in the free agency market, which is where we're going now. The NFL. Right. For all these teams that are not part of the playoffs any longer, there is a big bunch of data that they're going to be collecting, John, because it's about free agency. It's about the draft of the college players that are coming in. And we've seen quite a few college guys who are now jumping and saying, okay, I am going to go in the NFL draft. I'm not sure what the hurry is, quite frankly, because these guys are getting more money now, John. Did you see what the quarterback from Georgia, back when he went down to Miami, what they paid him? $4 million. $4 million for the 1 year he's going to be down in Miami. And by the way, Brock Purdy's still making $900,000. So, gives you a little bit of perspective of what's the hurry to get to the NFL. But free agency is going to be here. Here's the top 5. T. Higgins from Cincinnati, the wide receiver, great player. Kansas City's got a guard, Trey Smith. I think when you look at the offensive lineman, John, that is what I would focus on if I'm a free agency, if I'm a GM.
That's what the Bears should go after.
You got to find old linemen, right? Experienced old linemen that are very good. I think this kid is great. By the way, our buddy Khalil Mack is still around, and he's fought off age, kind of like the way King Henry has. They're aging, but they're aging in a good way, like a fine wine. This guy, Khalil Mack, had a great year with the Chargers. So what we're looking at is we're seeing a lot of edge rushers that are in that top 5. I think that's interesting. Some receivers, John, I will say it again and again and again. If you want to waste your money on a receiver that is this much different than the rest of the receivers, the other 25 or 30, I think it's crazy. I think when you find a running back and look at Saquon, look at the year that he has had for Philadelphia. Look at the year that King Henry's having down there at Baltimore. I mean, I think that is, if you go through all the teams in the playoffs, you're going to find teams that run the football. That's what people need to be looking for, is who are the running backs? Forget the receivers. You can draft a guy in the 2nd or 3rd round. It's not a whole lot different than the guys in the 1st round or some of these free agents. So I think that's the way I would go. Do you agree, or do you think I'm playing it down far too much about these receivers? Because I look at JJ and the Vikings receivers. Yeah, they're great. They really are. Maybe the best group of 3 in the NFL. But look where we are right now because we don't really have a great running game.
Right. Well, Pete, if you're Cincinnati and you want to win, you probably need to re-sign that receiver, but you also should go out and get Garrett Bowles, this offensive tackle from the Broncos, because the kid's a beast. He plays. He's like, believe it or not, Pete, he's from Walnut Creek, California, where you and I used to hang when we'd go out and see our brother Paul play at the University of Cal Berkeley. And then subsequent to that, just going out and enjoying ourselves at Cal. But yeah, this kid can play. and he's huge. He's 6'5", pro measured 6'5", Pete, like 310, and he is one of the best pass blockers in the NFL. So if the Bears don't get him, Cincinnati better. If anybody other than the Bears or Cincinnati get this guy, it just shows that neither of those two teams want to be competitive.
Right. Yeah. These GMs, I just don't understand how they don't see what we see oftentimes, though. Like, you better have a defense. Look at Burrow, as good as he is, and one of the best seasons the best season he's ever had. And they didn't really go anywhere. Why is that? Well, because they got no defense. They can't stop anybody. They can put 27, 28 points on the board, but the defense is going to give up 31. I mean, that to me says that there's a bit of a problem, and you've got to do some improving on that. How about this, John? NCAA college football. Now, it's Thursday. We don't do a show on Friday. We've got, I believe, is it the 20th is Monday, right? So it's going to be a lot of fun because that is also the game for the first college football championship series with 12, right? So you've got Ohio State going up against Notre Dame. And just looking at what everybody is talking about, I get it why everybody is on the Ohio State side. There's something about Notre Dame, though, and what Marcus Freeman has done with the talent that they've got as well, John. Now, it doesn't mean that they win the game, but I think that I don't know why they couldn't. I mean, everybody that put up on them, other than Northern Illinois early in the season, and that was a huge hiccup, and they turned it right off of that. And maybe that was their point in time, kind of like Michigan for Ohio State, kind of made them all of a sudden decide, well, let's see, we're going to beat Tennessee 42 points we put up on. We put 41 on Oregon. We put another 28 on Texas. They went through the gauntlet of teams, right? From the SEC, Tennessee and Texas, the Oregon with the Big Ten. They went through them all, and they looked fantastic, but they didn't look very good against Michigan. I'll tell you what, if they played by any chance like they did against Michigan, against Notre Dame, that game ends up, it turns into a blowout.
Yeah.
I think. So I don't know. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Notre Dame. It's an 8-point spread. What do you think? What does Notre Dame got to do?
Well, Notre Dame's just got to put their helmets on, Pete, and play, because this is the number 2 defense in the whole country in terms of averaging points per game against them. People don't score on Notre Dame. So that portends exactly what you said about Michigan. Against Michigan, Ohio State could not score. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were making mistakes. They were getting stopped. They were getting punts blocked and whatever else. I mean, if that happens, you're right. Notre Dame could dance through this thing. But the reason that it's an 8-point game for Ohio State, which might be a little rich, Pete, is that these guys have Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, the freshman phenom, who, if he could come out, would. But he can't, of course, because he's a true freshman. And then the running back, Travion Henderson or something like that. They can put up points on anybody. Now, they haven't played Notre Dame's defense yet. So if that defense shows up and really shows up, I'm with you. Notre Dame easily beats the spread. However, if those receivers, running backs, and Will Howard do what they've been doing in the playoffs so far, yeah, hands down, they should be an 8-point favorite.
Yep. All right, lastly, we got one more. We got a little bonus for sports on this Thursday since we're not around tomorrow. Here's the bonus. The NBA's got a competitor, John. I mean, the NBA, who's, by the way, as we've talked about, their ratings are in the crapper. They've been dropping. You go back 5 years, 10 years, whatever time frame you almost want to go. These guys have really been dropping. They don't have the Michael Jordans of the world anymore. Now they've got a bunch of guys that are sitting out, and you know what? And they think that's okay. And so because of that, I think the fans are speaking pretty loudly about what they think about what's going on in the NBA and load management and all the crap that goes with it. So somebody's out there who wants to raise $5 billion in private capital. And they've got UBS, they've got Evercore, they've got all these different folks. They want to raise all this money. Here's the thing that's puzzling to me, though, John. They want 6 men's teams, 6 women's teams, and they're going to be in 8 cities. I don't know what the hell these guys are talking about. They maybe can prove you and I wrong because I see you shaking your head.
Yeah.
But I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I mean, I played in one of these leagues. I played in a spring football league that actually had pretty good success enough that the NFL got kind of scared and they bought it and they ended up turning it into NFL Europe. And, that didn't work out either. But I don't know how this is going to work. I'm looking at the NBA, John. I mean, the NFL's had the USFL, the World Football League, the World League of American Football. They've had all these spring leagues and everything else, right? Some of them got a little bit of traction, some didn't. But in the NBA, are you kidding me? I don't even like just how the formation of what they're trying to start with doesn't even make sense to me. How about you?
Well, I think they're smart to only have 6 teams, Pete.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're stupid to have women. And that's not to say that women don't deserve a league, but the WNBA loses bank every year, even with Caitlin Clark, even with Angel Reese. So if you've got the most recognizable people of the last quarter century for women's basketball, and you're still hemorrhaging money, let somebody else write that check.
Yeah.
I think, Pete, that if you just did a 6-team league, you could, a 6-team competitive league against the NBA, you could make some traction. And if you pick the right cities and you got lucky with a player or two, you could have a real competitive league. And then sort of like the NFL, NFC versus AFC, and it's all part of the NFL. The AFL, of course, came and was a big competitor, signed Joe Namath and all that kind of stuff, and declared themselves a real league. If you want to burn through money, a guy like Bezos can burn through money. He loses $70 million a year with the Washington Post. The NBA loses multiples of that with the WNBA. So if you want to survive, you can't have the women's teams as part of it, at least not at this stage. Would I be against them ever doing it? Well, if the WNBA proves that they can actually turn a profit, then maybe I'd say 5 years from now, you could jump in that. But otherwise, stay the hell away from that and just focus in on a competitive league against the NBA. Don't let them do load management. Move the 3-point arc back even further so that guys actually have to play in the paint again instead of just firing howitzers over the 3, which gets boring, quite frankly, Pete. It's a lot of skill, but it's boring.
Yep. Well, and the ratings speak volumes, right? I mean, all you've got to do is look at the ratings, and people can say, well, but this or that. No, not this or that. It is what the ratings are. And I think if ESPN had to do it again, they probably wouldn't have paid the kind of money that they paid for the NBA. But it is what it is. And you know what? ESPN's big boy. They've got a lot going on in football, so they got plenty of cushion on the money side of that whole thing.
Yep. Well, folks, we appreciate all of you. Make sure that you put a heart or a like on any of the socials that we put out with the stocks, the sports, or whatever it might be. And we'll be back here for you Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you then.